Hey everybody, it's your girl D here with 8th House Energy, here to bring you another segment of the Cruel Summer series. This series is one that I put together to help explain some of the energies that we're going to be feeling during this summer. This is the summer of retrogrades. There are currently 5 planets in retrograde right now in the month of July. 3 of the planets that went into retrograde and that are in retrograde went into retrograde in April, and that was Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. They are still in retrograde, and they're going to be in retrograde until Jupiter's going to be there, I believe, until mid-August or early August. Pluto's going to be around in retrograde until October, and then Saturn's going to be in retrograde until September. Okay. Now, on June 21st, we had the 4th planet go into retrograde, and that planet was Neptune. All right. And then today, well, yesterday, okay, we had the 5th planet go into retrograde, and that was Mercury. So this video is going to be on Mercury and some of the effects of the Mercury retrograde, since this is one of the most infamous retrogrades of all the planets, because this one happens more often, as in more times during the year than any other retrogrades, or any other retrograded planets. So for example, the 3 that are in retrograde, that have been in retrograde since April, they're in retrograde for months at a time, where Jupiter is going to be there until September. Okay, so that's for months at a time. But Mercury's only in retrograde for about 3 weeks at a time. But Mercury is the only planet that goes into retrograde multiple times each year. So to give you a better understanding of why that occurs, I'm going to explain to you the planetary hierarchy. So if you look at our galaxy, all of our planets rotate around the sun. Okay, the sun is the king, and the moon is the queen as far as us with Earth. Okay, so you have the king and the queen. All right, the sun and the moon. Now let's say they got together and they had children. Okay, Earth is a daughter, Mars is a son, Venus is a daughter as well. And then we have little Mercury. Okay, Mercury is one of the younger planets, or the youngest planet, if I'm not mistaken, in our galaxy. So it moves the fastest, okay? So this is why it goes into retrograde 3 times a year. And this is also why it only stays in retrograde for about 3 weeks out of that time frame. So during the year 2019, Mercury is in retrograde 3 times. It already went into retrograde on May 3rd through May 28th. And now we're experiencing the retrograde. It went into retrograde yesterday, which was July 7th. And it's going to be in retrograde until the 31st of July. And then it's going to go back into retrograde on Halloween. And it's going to stay there until November 20th. Okay, so this is why I wanted to just break down to you the planetary hierarchy, so that you understand that Mercury is the fastest, it's the youngest moving planet, and it's the fastest. It goes into retrograde the most each year, and it stays in retrograde the shortest period of time. And that's because of the quickness of it. Okay, so naturally with the quickness of it, Mercury deals with intellect. It deals with how we process information. It deals with communication. Okay. So now when we talk about communication, how we process things and information, when a planet is direct, we can have little misunderstandings about what's going on around us. But when Mercury retrograde hits, there are major misunderstandings going on because of the energies of the Mercury retrograde. And I want to explain that to you so that you don't have what is called a cruel summer, trying to figure out why these energies are what's going on, and why this is, why you're experiencing some of the things you're experiencing. So let's talk about the things that happen with the Mercury retrograde. Like I said, Mercury is the planet of communication. It's the planet of how we process things, how we make sense of the communications that we take in from person, place, or things. Okay. And it has to do with the way that we look at things, how we understand something. So for example, right now, you are taking in this information of this video. All right. So this is giving you an understanding, and you're processing this information. Okay. So this is what Mercury is responsible for in reference to human behavior. And as you know, with the study of astrology is basically the planetary alignments, the energies they emit, and how these energies affect our behavior here. Okay. With each other. Okay, so let's talk about Mercury retrograde. Now, with Mercury retrograde, a lot of people are very nervous when this energy shows its head because it can cause a lot of mishaps, especially in communication. All right. So when Mercury is in retrograde, we could see a lot of unfortunate communication. A lot of misunderstandings occur during Mercury retrogrades. Okay. So one thing that we are advised not to do is to sign any contracts or buy any large ticketed items during a Mercury retrograde. You don't want to sign any contracts because you could very well misunderstand what's in the contract, or you could just read it and process it differently than you normally would if these Mercury retrograde energies were not swirling around your head, right? So it's recommended that you don't sign any major contracts, that are, binding you to something for a long period of time, or for something that has a lot to do with large amounts of money. Okay, you want to be concerned about that. Also, with the Mercury retrograde, you want to be careful of how you communicate because your communication could be misunderstood. So, for example, I'm communicating with you right now. You may misunderstand something because of the Mercury retrograde energy, but if you come back to this video after the dust settles from the Mercury retrograde energy, you may understand something a bit differently, okay? And that doesn't have anything to do with your comprehension skills, your lack thereof. It's just the energies kind of short circuit our wires when it comes to how we process communication, all right? Some of the other unfortunate things that happen during the Mercury retrograde is we lose our valuables. I lost my credit card the other day. I lost it on Saturday, okay? I went to the grocery store last night and I left my phone on the grocery cart. I don't normally do these things. I normally don't lose my credit cards. I normally don't, leave my cell phone just anywhere. But Mercury can make you very forgetful. So you can lose things. You can lose things of value. So just keep that in mind with the Mercury retrograde that this can happen. Also with the Mercury retrograde, texts and emails can be misread and misunderstood. Heck, they're misread and misunderstood when Mercury's in direct, right? But it can happen more so when Mercury is in retrograde. So you want to be very careful what you're saying in a text. A lot of people sometimes when we're doing multiple things, we start to text someone and then we stop and go do something else. But sometimes with the Mercury retrograde, a glitch could occur and that text will be sent. And then we look at it like, oh, I didn't want to say that, or I wasn't finished saying what I wanted to say, Or what could happen is you could try starting to text someone, and then what may happen is the text may go to the wrong person. And it's like, uh-oh. So you really want to be careful with that. Same thing with email. If during this time you can just maybe schedule a call to talk to someone, or if it's something that's very simple that you can respond to so that it's clear and understood, then go ahead and put that in an email. But if you can't, maybe you may want to say, hey, there's a couple of things that I want to clarify. Let's schedule a 10-minute call, so that there's no confusion about what's going on, because Mercury retrograde will cause confusion in the way that people receive your information. And it can also cause confusion in the way that you process information that's received from others. Another unfortunate situation that could occur during Mercury retrograde is because Mercury also deals with transportation, short distance transportation, travel. Okay, technology is king when it comes to making reservations for your airline, your plane, your cruise, your bus ride. Doesn't matter. All right, if you're taking mass transportation to travel out of the area, you really want to just double check your flights, make sure there's no cancellations. A lot of cancellations occur during Mercury retrogrades, so you make sure you plan out your trip. You really want to avoid, spur of the moment travel. Hey, today is Monday, and hey, you know what? I want to fly out Wednesday, so I'm gonna go ahead and just book my flight. What could happen is, some examples of what happens during Mercury retrograde is, say you book that flight, you're leaving from upstate New York on Wednesday, and you're going down to Florida, but you have to transfer from one plane to another when you're in Georgia. Well, you get to Georgia, your plane lands, and you're waiting to get on your second plane, but what happens is that plane can be canceled. That flight could be canceled, it could be postponed, it could be delayed. That is known to happen within a Mercury retrograde. Also, problems with your vehicles. Anything that's run by technology, you definitely want to take your vehicles. If you're having some issues with your vehicle, please take it to get it checked. Mercury retrograde, the energies are known to have for people to have issues with their cars. All right. You can also have issues with any form of technology you use. Your phone might glitch out on you. Your computer may be on the fritz. Your large appliances, there are people who have experienced their washers overflowing, unfortunate situations, power outages. These things go on during a Mercury retrograde. So just be aware of what's going on and the energies that are out there so that, when you see these things happen, you're like, oh, okay, it's not me. I'm not, I'm not one who usually loses things, but all of a sudden I'm losing things. Oh yeah, that's right. It's the Mercury retrograde. It happens. Let me just take extra attention or pay extra attention to my valuables and the things that I don't want to lose. All right. So those are some of the things that you're going to experience with the Mercury retrograde. Now let's talk about the planetary houses in which Mercury is going to be retrograde in. This is an interesting one because Mercury is going to be retrograde in 2 houses. So from July 7th through July 19th, Mercury is going to be retrograde in the house of Leo. That is the 5th house. That's the house that has to do with recreational activities, leisure activities, things you like to do for fun. It also has to do with the house of your children, your older children. It has to do with love and sex. Okay, so when you have Mercury retrograde in this house, again, this is the house of communication, how you process and receive information. So when you're talking about your leisurely activities, the example that I gave when you're trying to make a reservation, to travel and the things that could happen with that, keep that in mind. You want to try to avoid spur of the moment things, arrangements, because you could very well make a reservation today to go somewhere tomorrow, and there may be a glitch in the system and your reservation might not be there, or if it's there, it might be incorrect. Okay, that type of weird stuff happens with Mercury retrograde. So when we talk about the 5th house, house of recreation and leisure, this has to do, and it also has to do with travel. So you could experience these issues. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Also, the 5th house talks about creativity. All right. So you may notice that if you are a creative person, whether you're a writer, a painter, a sculptor, anybody who creates something, you may experience blocks during this time. Writer's block. You may not be able to create in the way that you want to. You may just be dissatisfied with what you've created, especially during a Mercury retrograde. So keep that in mind. Take it easy on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. This is not your fault. These things happen, okay? And we talk about children in the 5th house as well, your older children. And so the way they communicate with you, you may feel like they're on a totally different planet anyway, especially if you have adolescent children and you have teens. This is the house that handles those children of those ages. So there may be even more blocks of communication. Imagine that. During a Mercury retrograde. So you really just want to have a little bit of patience with your loved ones, okay? Let's talk about, let's see, what else do we need to talk about for the 5th house? Oh, how can we forget this? This is what Mercury retrograde is infamous for, okay? So the 5th house deals with love and love and sex, okay? The 8th house does have to do with sex. It has to do with sex as far as reproduction. But in the 5th house, love and sex has to do with, fun, the exciting, sexy part of it, right? So when you have Mercury in retrograde in this house and it relates to love and relationships, you got to be careful how you communicate with your partner. Some people like to send texts, messages that are just for your partner's eyes only. They could be pictures, anything like that. You want to be very careful that it goes to who it's destined to go to. You want to make sure it doesn't go to your boss by mistake. Mercury retrograde can do that. You won't want to send that sexy text or that sexy picture to your kid by mistake, okay? Be very careful what you're sending and how you're sending it out if you choose to participate in those types of communications, especially during the Mercury retrograde. And also, here's the fun part about Mercury retrograde. Well, it may not be fun for some, but it's the most popular part of the Mercury retrograde. And this is where you may experience nostalgia and reference to your past relationships. Because remember, the 5th house deals with sex and relationships, right? So what a lot of people will experience during this Mercury retrograde is that a lot of your exes may come back to visit, may come back to say hello. okay? Or you may be reminiscing about one of your exes and wanting to go back and reminisce and communicate with an ex or say hello, okay? Mercury retrograde is the energy of communication. And so in the fifth house with love and relationships, a lot of the energies that Mercury retrograde will bring up are energies of past communications with past lovers or past friends, old friends, okay? Or family members that you don't talk to anymore. So for example, say you had an old colleague that you used to work with and you guys got along great. All of a sudden you guys had a falling out. You may think about them during this time and, the things that you guys said and how you communicated with each other and how things ended. And you may be regretful about it, or whatever feelings you may have about it. And they may think about that as well. So you guys may end up communicating. You may reach out. Somebody may reach out to the other. Don't be surprised. That happens during the Mercury retrograde. And then the same thing for intimate partners, where maybe you had a partner that you were dealing with and for whatever reason you guys couldn't work it out and you went your separate ways. But mostly it was about communication as to why you went your separate ways. Well, if there were some unresolved conflicts, in you internally or within them in reference to your relationship, like, Dad, I know what I did wrong. I didn't communicate properly with them. If I would have done that, things could work out. Let me reach out and see if I can see, what they're doing or how they're doing. So there's a lot of stalker activity going on right now. Not as negative, but it could be. But stalking in a sense where you're trying to see how they're doing. Do I have it in? Can I give them a call and see how they're doing to see if we can rekindle things? This is the type of energies that are going on. Also, you want to think about it like this. If you have an ex-lover that you dealt with and, you decided that, what, it's done. I'm not going to worry about it. I didn't get closure on a situation, but I'm just going to move on. Mercury retrograde may bring up those feelings again. And so sometimes you may just have dreams about an old lover. It doesn't mean that they're coming back. You just may have dreams about them, because that's the way the universe is telling you need to process that and close that out. Okay, so sometimes you can have a dream because you're going to run into them, but sometimes you can have a dream because there's unresolved conflicts within your spirit and your energy about the way things ended with that person. So don't be surprised if you have dreams about an ex. Also, you may run into old friends. You might be out somewhere and you run into somebody you haven't seen in years. It could be an ex or it could just be a friend, a high school classmate, an old high school classmate, college mate, an old colleague, somebody that you connected with and you had good vibes with. Or it could be somebody that you didn't have good vibes with. All right. But this is what Mercury retrograde will bring up. Okay. So that's for the fifth house. Okay. That's the house of Leo. Again, Mercury is going to be in retrograde from yesterday until the 19th in this house. So don't be surprised if you experience some of these things I talked about. Now, from the 19th of July to the 31st, Mercury is going to be in retrograde in the fourth house, which is the house of Cancer. Now, let's talk about that house. That house has to deal with the relationship with your mom, the relationships that go on in your home, your relationship with your family members. This is ancestral roots, generational communication, things like that. Okay, so what you may experience with Mercury in retrograde in this house is, for example, there's a lot of family reunions going on right now at this time of year. So, I know, for example, some family reunion ceremonies, they open up with a prayer. So what you could do to try to avoid any miscommunication between family members as much as possible, but we know that's impossible with family, but you can put the best effort out there. Just, when you say your prayer, just ask for positive communication among your family members. You don't have to go into Mercury retrograde and have, Aunt Glow looking at you like, what are you talking about? What is this Mercury retrograde? Are you crazy? So you don't have to go into specifics, but a lot of family reunions, they have their family prayer, but just ask for positive communication among your family members so that you guys are blessed and you can avoid that, situation of having a cruel summer with your family reunion. Also, with the fourth house, this deals with your relationship with your mom. So this can be a situation where it could be as unfortunate as you and your mom don't communicate. During this time, if that is the case for you, you could very well be thinking of your mom could be thinking of you. So in situations where your mom is still here, in the world with us, she may want to reach out to you. You may want to reach out to her. That's going to be normal. And even if you don't, she may come to mind, okay? And she's probably definitely going to be thinking about you. All right, so just understand that, okay? That may occur. Also, you're looking at situations with generational curses. This is the time where some of that stuff is going to be uprooted. A generational curse example could be, say you grew up in a family where there was not a lot of emotional support. You grew up in a family of providers. Your family provided for you. You ain't never have to worry about holes in your clothes. You never had to worry about not sleeping on a comfortable bed. You never had to worry about not having food in the refrigerator, not having holes in your clothes, not having the electricity out. You were provided for. You were taken good care of. But as far as that emotional nourishment, maybe that was something that wasn't, evident in your family. Okay, so what may happen at this time is you may have grown up and had children and you decided, I'm going to break that generational curse. I'm going to be more affectionate with my child. I'm going to hug my child. I'm going to hold them. I'm going to kiss them. I'm going to love them. I'm going to ask them about their day. I'm going to show my child that emotional support that my child needs. So that's an example of the communication of Mercury retrograde breaking generational curses. All right. So these are some of the things that you could experience within the Mercury retrograde season in the fourth house. The fourth house also deals with, your domestic home, your domain. So, you have the older children there, like I talked about with Leo in the fifth house. So you may have some issues with communication, not that you don't already with teenagers, right? But it just might be more so. So you just want to maybe practice a little bit more patience with your adolescents and teenagers. So let me just see. I want to make sure I got everything for you. I know with Mercury retrograde, it's a lot of information. A lot of things can go wrong, but I just want to make sure I got as much information to you as possible so that you are aware of these strange energies and how they could turn, bad, not so good. All right, which is why I wanted to conclude the Mercury retrograde into the cruel summer series. You can also look at the end of this video. I'm going to have posted up some of the other segments from the cruel summer series, and you can check those out. The first episode I did talks a little bit about all of the other energies from the other planets that are currently in retrograde. So you can check that out to give you a better understanding. These energies this is a planetary shift that's going on right now. These energies are not just affecting you or your family members or your colleagues. This is going on worldwide. Okay, so you're going to see it on a micro level where it may be in your home versus a macro level where you may be watching Bloomberg and you see that there's some issues going on with these major multinational corporations. So this is going to be felt across the board, across the planetary board, okay? So this is why I felt it was really important to do this series so that we can understand what's going on around us. And when we understand what's going on around us, we can better navigate these energies so that we can enjoy our summers, okay? So I just want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much. Check out the other cruel summer segments to give you a better understanding of the other energies that are going on. I probably am going to do Chiron next, which is the wounded healer. That comet or constellation is going into retrograde in July as well. So take a look at that. That'll give you some info on Chiron. And I will check you guys out later. Thanks for tuning in. It's your girl D with 8th House Energies. Peace out.